My name is Natalie Bravo Barbie, and I'm a photographer. I work with antiquarian photographic processes, also known as alternative process photography. So I am a South American born. I was born in Argentina, and so I am a Latina. A lot of my photography work deals with memory. And so my family immigrated from Argentina when I was a little girl here to the US, and we landed in Queens. And so in my work, I like to retell stories about my immigration process, also what it was like being a female growing up in a predominantly female household. And so for me, a lot of my work is influenced and has the narrative of being an immigrant and being a female, and particularly a feminist. So a lot of my work deals with ideas of feminism, so my gender, discovering what my gender means to me and how objects deal a lot with that. And so I found that throughout the years, the object that mostly I identified with as being not only a retainer of memory, a retainer of gender, was lace. And so I began working with cyanotypes in 2015. My studio is actually at home and in my backyard, and so I haven't been disrupted too much in my practice because I continue to go into the studio. The thing is, COVID has put a stop to a lot of the programming that was planned for this year, so that slowed down the amount of work that I do need to put together. It also delayed grants that were granted to me, and so it just made everything it put a pause on everything, and so things are slowly starting to resume again. So the piece is called Femicide Florals. It's part of a larger installation that I'm working on. So the flowers that I make represent women that have been killed via femicide, gender-based murders because they're women. And so I considered flowers to be part of a funeral arrangement in memory of these women. And so I started making these cyanotype flowers as a representation of domestic violence against women. So when I saw that there was this open call for work in the garden, I had already been considering showing this work at a garden because it has so many elements of the garden in it. And so I make these prints in my own garden at home. So it just felt right to continue that and have it, instead of in Belrose in my garden, to have it here in Elmhurst and Flushing at the Queens Botanical Garden. It feels really nice to be out in nature after being in quarantine and shelter in for so many months. It also feels nice to see other people and other faces that I haven't really been exposed to, many strangers and people that I haven't met in so long. So it's nice to be out here in the garden, a new space for me, working and also having these conversations. I love the fact that I can make this installation outdoors and not in a gallery space, because it opens up the conversation with paper imagery and nature. Like, I've never considered being able to actually put my flowers that are so delicate to water outdoors. And so having this time to make this work, to consider how I can actually make it survive for at least a month, 2 months out in nature, has been a challenge, and it required a lot of research. And it was just really exciting to think that something that would be so precious hanging in a gallery or on a white wall is now actually on the backdrop of all these trees and these flowers. It's just, it's more than I ever imagined when I began this project. So for me, my heart is so happy with this.
My name is Kyle. So since quarantine, it actually turned out to be the gift in a disguise for me. I wasn't able to go to my studio, which is in Lower East Side, for complete 3 months. So my home became my studio. It really gave me a solid time to really focusing on my creative process, creative idea more freely without any deadline or any like a given theme or ideas. In March, there were 2 group shows I was participating in, but it was never opened or cut short. So my work is about the abstraction, and also that sort of comes from intuitive part of you. But like you see everything, see here, taste everything, and remember it, and you are trying to sort of bring all those senses through the abstraction. About this local garden is inspired by 8th century Japanese dry garden in like a Kamakura era, and now you can still go to Kyoto, Tokyo to see one of those gardens. And I always wanted to try, shaping, my paintings into 3-dimensional form. It's surrounded by large trees and glass over there, but over here it's kind of dry, and sort of I can keep the minimal flavor here, and then sort of creates the contrast over the green as a background. It's a perfect season to be just in this environment, just just to breathe in the air, just itself, which is so refreshing. So I really love this, off the wall challenge.
My name is Cecilia André. I work in paintings, but more currently in transparencies that yield colored shadows. So I would call it mixed media at this point, and installations. I am a granddaughter of Lebanese immigrants to Brazil, and I grew up in Brazil for a long time, so I would say Latino of upbringing and Middle Eastern of customs and blood and heritage. I've been using sewing in my work, and this is considered a craft and an undervalued. Women have done beautiful artwork throughout the ages. I repurpose a lot of my embroidery and antique linens. I also model a lot of and look at a lot of the lace that's made in the northeastern part of Brazil, which is an amazing artistic craft movement. And I hope that this underpaid artwork will transform into something mainstream. I'd say that COVID affected our family in many ways. We have a daughter that lives abroad. We haven't been able to see her for months. We have a daughter that lives in another neighborhood. My husband moved his office to our house. I moved my studio to my house. So there were a lot of changes, but thankfully none of us got ill, so we are holding on. I feel that things change very much in terms of opportunities for artists. I have been doing for 8 years tours of the galleries throughout the city, really appreciated all the spaces, small spaces, took people to see them, wrote about them, studied. It was a life source of inspiration, and I don't think that's going to be possible right now. I feel a lot of places to hang work are, changed into being virtual spaces, and people are tired of looking at their screens. I feel like a bird whose cage door was let open. And here I am. I can spread out, breathe air, be with people, see all this beautiful nature. No, I'm really happy to be out here. I think it's a collaboration with nature, and I also feel like from the point of view of a viewer, it's interesting to be surprised that in a place that they're not expecting to see art, then suddenly they're like, how can I define this? And then they come to the realization it's art. So I like it. My work is very based on the fact and the imagination that it's going to be in nature. So the red elements are really strong because they're a little different. The continuum of the colors. I think even though I do like some of these colors that can be strident, they work with the sunlight, So yeah, I'm always thinking about that. I feel that when people get to experience sunlight being painted, because these colors, they paint the natural light and they transform them into colors, it gets them thinking about the phenomena of light. And even as the sun comes out and clouds make the sun less intense, it changes the color of the shadows cast, and people start looking at beyond just the shadows. They start perceiving light, because light is the essence of our vision, of everything we do. In the garden, I have 3 pieces, and I purposely did the shapes of the pieces very different. This piece is called Rainbow Squared, because of the colors of the rainbow. Then I have another piece that's all the way up there against the fence, and it's called Breaking Waves. And it has a lot of this movement, of one color going into another. It also has a lot of transparencies of color on color. And in the entrance of the Botanical Gardens, to your right, before you go up in the green roof, there's another piece that has circles, circular shapes, more organic. And they're peppered, and the color scheme is one being different than the other rather than a continuum. And that one is called Blossom because, there's an avenue here called Blossom, which is so cute. And I think this whole idea of the sunlight coming into the colors and then creating patches, it feels like a different kind of blossoming, but analogous to the blossoms of the garden. I am so happy to be outside of the studio into this place that is nature-filled, beautifully designed. But it's interesting, sometimes people assume that gardens are just a chunk of nature, but they also have a design to them, and I've been actually a horticultural partner of the High Line for 4 years, working in their gardens, and I was very frustrated not to be able to work outdoors on my work and as a gardener. So now this was a doubly wonderful thing for me to be out here.
My name is Asano, and I create mixed media, sculptural painting using fabric, pigment, sewing, drawing, and painting. Being a Japanese woman and an immigrant all relate to my art. In Japan, many people don't focus on individuality, and society tends to criticize people whose behavior departs from the usual norm. Meanwhile, in the United States, here society mainly focuses on race. When people see me as Asian, they look for their definition of Asian. And both societies are still struggling with the gender roles. For these reasons, my personal experience made me deeply think about my individuality. I believe that we tend to attach labels onto each other, and those labels reflect and affect how others think about our identities, as well as how we think about ourselves. This specific placement of my work completed the whole image of my concept that I was trying to express. I chose the rose garden, close near the rose garden, because I want to create a contrast between my artificial roses and then right there the natural roses. I believe this environment can also highlight both commonality and differences. I had been going to my studio and stay back home every day for the past 3 months, and I didn't get a chance to experience nature even before the corona time because I was busy. So it feels really great being out in nature compared to indoor the gallery. I feel really good that my work can be connected to this large space and be combined as one.
My name is Christine Sloan Stoddard, and I work in creative writing and interdisciplinary visual and digital art. I'm mixed race. My mother is from El Salvador. She's mestiza, which means that she is of Indigenous and European descent. She's primarily of the Papil Indians, which are the Aztecan and Mayan people of El Salvador. And my father is white. He's Scottish American. His grandparents came from Scotland. I got so depressed during quarantine at the very start. I think like many people, especially active people who are out in the community, even as an introverted person, I make an effort to be out, showing my work, meeting other people, looking at their work, just sharing and learning and trying to have conversations with different kinds of people. It was also very difficult at the start to even have a place to work. I do work for a few different organizations, and most of them offer me space of some kind. So I have little studios and closets tucked all over this city. And to not have access to any of those spaces and the vast majority of my materials and older works was such a challenge. So I adapted. I made sure that everything I was making, I could make on my computer or at my kitchen table. As far as my family, yeah, the pandemic's been hard. My husband was furloughed, and we get all of the benefits for us as a couple through his job. So we have to figure out what to do. Luckily, I'm still earning an income. A lot of the other kinds of work where I would go into a school, go into a theater, go into a gallery, that has all dried up. For the most part, that work doesn't exist anymore. My mother doesn't work because of medical issues, and also some cultural issues, cultural traditions, I should say, not issues. So just trying to be there for my parents, especially since they live in another state, and trying to figure out what the financial long-term plan for them might be has been extremely stressful, especially given my mom's medical condition. She is a very vulnerable person and absolutely cannot get COVID. Yeah, so it's been hard. It's been hard for everybody, but it's been hard. I was very informed by nature for this piece. We had a chance to look at all the spots on Zoom in advance. And as soon as I saw this spot, I gravitated toward it. I loved the shade. I loved all the different trees and logs and rocks. While I was just street combing, I found these old cabinet doors on the side of the street and figured, you know, this is my gate. This is the gate to this installation. So I'll take you to the heart of it, the nest. So this is Rabbit's Storytelling Throne, and all the little odds and ends, a combination of handmade things, digitally made things. This chair was something that I also salvaged from the street while I was street combing and just looking for materials to work with. It stood out to me as the throne. I came across a lot of chairs, but this is my top pick. So I only very recently got access to two of the spaces where I have different materials and work. This was in the past 2 weeks. So prior to that, I was making everything at home, working digitally or only on very small handmade pieces that I could work on at my kitchen table. And I would collaborate with people mainly over Zoom and other kinds of video chat. Just having the chance to revisit some of my studio/storage spaces after 3 months of not seeing them was extremely emotional. And it led me to just dig through stuff for hours and think very nostalgically about pieces I had made over the years, and then coming to this space, which I'm sure under normal circumstances is never this quiet, but having a couple of hours where I can just work in close to isolation, semi-isolation, was a real luxury in a way, especially after all of us have lost so many things, and in some cases people, in the past 3 months. This was really calming. Since this area is where the children have their summer camp, if they come back in the fall and they have some kind of after-school program, I want them to run toward this and be like, what is this? And that's not something that children get to do in the average gallery. This piece is called Rabbit's Storytelling Throne. I've always associated rabbits with this kind of xenophobic, racist thing. My mom was often confused for our nanny because she's darker than us, and a lot of people say she doesn't look like us. And she's also Catholic, or she was raised Catholic. About Catholic immigrants will say they breed like rabbits. As much as I love rabbits and think they're adorable, I just have this negative connotation. And I was interested in changing that story.
My name is Mariana Tonini Vilas Boas, and I work with traditional and digital media painting. I identify as Latino Brazilian. COVID affected me in so many ways, especially because I'm studying here in New York, and my whole family still lives in Brazil. Traveling or visiting them, it's something that can't happen right now. I spent 3 months almost without leaving my house and being social with people, and that was a period very intense. Staying out after so long quarantining is definitely feels good. It gives me energy. Just not being in my computer or my phone or cuffed up inside of an office that is my home right now, it feels pretty good. It was a challenge creating art for a space out in the open, especially for a painting. I'm not sure how it's gonna survive or what is gonna happen to it, which is kind of exciting and at the same time scary. I wanted the painting to integrate parts of the park. So for example, I put on some twigs. I wanted the painting to be integrated with the tree. So not just the color, but the objects that surrounds it and makes the frame of the painting. So Marielle is an activist, and I chose this space because I wanted her to be the central piece, and I thought that this space, the crabapple trees, they offer that. It's a space that people come here to picnic and to gather together and to have fun. And I wanted Marielle to be able to be seen. So this is Marielle Franco. She was an activist from Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro. Very high-spoken person. She was a politician too. She worked heavily for the rights, human rights, and the poor people, especially the Black community. And people need to know her name, and people need to know all the work that she did to keep on doing it, to keep her alive.